Policy and resource linkages, a conversation on strengthening education reform. Hello, I would like to begin a conversation about the connection between policy and resources in education reform. It should be obvious that policies alone cannot drive change. Without adequate resources to support them, even the best reforms will fall short. But doesn't it follow that if policies are created without considering how they will be funded and implemented, they become little more than ideas on paper? I have observed that too often, education policies are announced with great ambition, but without the necessary infrastructure, funding, or personnel to bring them to life. Can you imagine the frustration of teachers who are asked to implement new curricula without proper training? Or schools expected to adopt technology-driven learning without the necessary devices or internet access? Wouldn't it be more effective if every policy came with a clear roadmap for resources, ensuring that educators and students alike had what they needed to succeed? Doesn't it follow that policies should be designed with flexibility to meet the needs of diverse student populations? A one-size-fits-all approach cannot serve urban, rural, and special needs students equally. It should be obvious that equitable resource distribution is just as important as policy design itself. What if funding formulas prioritize schools based on need rather than maintaining existing disparities? Wouldn't it be transformative if every student, regardless of location or background, had access to the same high-quality education? It is time now to ensure that policies and resources are aligned at every level. Can you imagine how much stronger education systems would be if funding was allocated based on real classroom needs rather than political priorities? What if policymakers worked directly with educators to understand what's required for meaningful reform, rather than assuming a top-down approach would work? Wouldn't it be more powerful if every school had the tools, staff, and support necessary to turn policy goals into real-world results? I have observed that when policies and resources are disconnected, teachers and students bear the burden of an underfunded system. Doesn't it follow that when schools are underfunded, even well-intended reforms become ineffective? It should be obvious that investment in education is not just a cost, it's a direct investment in the future of society. What if we restructured education budgets to prioritize sustainable, long-term support rather than short-term fixes? Wouldn't it be more effective to ensure that every policy decision is backed by the resources needed to implement it successfully? It should be obvious that the strength of an education system depends on the strength of its policies and its resources. Can you imagine how much more impactful reform would be if every policy was designed with a clear implementation strategy, adequate funding, and ongoing evaluation? What if we moved beyond policy announcements and focused on policy execution? Wouldn't it be revolutionary if every student had access to a well-equipped learning environment, trained educators, and modern technology as a standard, not a privilege? The future of education reform depends on bridging the gap between policy and resources. It is time now to recognize that policies without resources are just empty promises, and resources without strong policies lead to inefficiency. Doesn't it follow that if we truly want lasting, effective reform, we must ensure that every educational initiative is fully supported, equitably funded, and designed to meet the needs of all students? The real question isn't whether we need change, it's whether we are willing to commit the resources necessary to make it happen.